There are things time simply cannot erase. It doesn't matter how many winters pass, or how many springs dare to bloom out of the ashes of who we once were. Some memories stay alive, not like ghosts. Ghosts, at least, vanish with the morning light. No. These memories are open wounds. They pulse. They bleed quietly. And you learn to live with them because there is no other choice. I still hear the sound of the boots. Thump, thump, thump. Leather striking hardened mud in a military rhythm, rolling down the village's main road like a slow, inevitable, approaching thunder. It was the autumn of 1943. I was 19. 19. That absurd age when you still believe the world was made for you, that love is eternal, that promises actually mean something. Young enough to dream, old enough to understand that in wartime, dreams are dangerous luxuries. Luxuries that kill. It was that day, under a sky the color of melted lead, the wind carrying the scent of rust and fear, that I saw him for the first time. And everything changed. Everything. He walked into the bakery the way someone walks into a church. Quiet, respectful, almost as if asking the air for permission to enter. Tall, broad shoulders, as though he carried a weight larger than himself. His American uniform was soaked, clinging to him like a second skin. Boots caked in mud up to the ankles. Helmet under his arm, dripping water onto the worn wooden floor. But the thing that stole my breath was the smile. Small, warm, completely out of place in a world washed in gray. As if he carried, somewhere inside him, a piece of sunlight the war hadn't managed to steal yet. "Good morning," he said, slow, careful, breaking each syllable like someone still learning the language. "Do you sell bread here?" I almost laughed. We were in a bakery. The smell of baked flour practically lived in the walls. But I noticed, by the way he looked down right after speaking, by the faint blush rising up his sun-browned neck, that he wasn't there for the bread. He was there for me. "We do," I answered, holding back a smile. "But only if you promise not to flood the whole floor." He glanced down at the puddles his boots had left, then back at me. And he smiled again, wider this time, revealing white teeth and a small dimple in his left cheek that made me forget, for one heartbeat, that there was a war outside. "I'll try my best, ma'am. Daniel Carter, 23, U.S. Army Corporal, a farm boy from Ohio, stationed at a temporary base outside London, waiting for orders to cross the channel." In the days that followed, he came back, and came back, and came back, always with a different excuse. "I need matches. I forgot to buy soap. Do you have tea? The stuff at the barracks is awful. Things the army had in abundance. Things he clearly didn't need. But we both pretended to believe the excuses. He'd stand by the counter, helmet beside him, fingers tapping nervously on the wood as he watched me work. He asked questions about the village. Simple, innocent questions, but I knew he was only trying to stay longer. "What's it like living here? Are you afraid of the bombings? Have you lost anyone to the war?" I answered. He listened, and in the silences between words, something grew. Quiet, invisible, inevitable. Sometimes he spoke about home. A farm with wheat fields that glowed gold under the summer sun. A younger sister who sang opera in the shower, off-key but joyful. A mother who prayed every night on her knees, begging God to bring her boys home whole. "She lights a candle for each of us," he said once, softly, almost embarrassed. 3 candles. One for me, one for my brother in the Navy, one for my cousin somewhere in the Pacific. Her house smells like melted wax and hope. Hope. Such a strange word in times like those. One night, after locking up the bakery and heading home, he appeared out of nowhere, waiting on the corner, hands in his pockets, pretending he was simply passing by. "May I walk you home?" he asked. I should have said no. I should have been sensible. But something in me, something foolish, desperate, alive, said yes. We walked in silence through dim streets, lit only by the thin moon and the shaded lamps meant to hide us from air raids. The world was falling apart. Distant sirens, rationing, fear at every corner. But with him beside me, I felt safe. For the first time in years, I felt safe. At my door, he stopped. He looked at me for a long moment, as if memorizing every detail of my face. "Ellie," he said my name like a prayer. "I know this is madness. I know I have no right to ask, but may I see you again? Tomorrow?" I should have said no, but I said yes. And I kept saying yes, until there were no tomorrows left. The train station smelled of coal, damp iron, and despair. White steam burst from the locomotive in thick clouds, turning everything into a ghostly haze. Soldiers rushed past with heavy packs and tight jaws. Mothers clung to sons as if sheer will could hold them there. Sweethearts cried into uniforms, clinging to promises everyone knew could be lies. Promises made in war. Fragile. Empty. Necessary. Daniel stood under a flickering lamp, the trembling light throwing shifting shadows across his face. When he saw me, something in him softened. But his eyes carried a weight I had never seen before. Fear. Not of dying, but of never seeing me again. "Ellie," he breathed. He stepped close, brushed a strand of hair from my face with trembling fingers. Fingers that smelled of cheap soap and tobacco. His hand moved to my chin, holding me with a tenderness that felt forbidden in times like these. "They're sending us to France," he said, voice rough. "The entire unit. We crossed the channel in 2 days. It's dangerous. Very dangerous. I don't know when I'll be back." My heart broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a silent cracking, deep and spreading like ice under pressure. "But I'll come back," he went on, gripping my hand tighter. "Before winter ends. I promise, Ellie. Before winter ends." Before winter ends. As if time bowed to him, as if promises held power over bullets and bombs. "Don't promise that," I whispered, voice trembling. "Don't promise what you can't control." "Then promise me something," he said, eyes shining. "Promise you'll wait for me. Promise you won't give up on me." Cruel, I thought. Unfair. Impossible. But what I said was, "I promise." He kissed me. Not gently. Not like the movies. It was desperate, hungry, aching, like he was trying to remember the taste of me well enough to survive whatever hell waited for him. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you, Ellie, and I'll come back. I swear." The whistle blew, sharp and final. He grabbed his pack, climbed the steps, turned once more, and waved. I waved back, and then he vanished into the smoke. I stood there trembling as the train pulled away, carrying half of me with it. The platform had never felt so cold. Weeks crawled by like infected wounds, then months. Autumn became winter. Winter deepened, merciless, freezing whatever warmth was left. But the letters came, not often, sometimes after weeks. But they came, creased, worn, smelling of salt and damp earth. I read them until the words blurred, until I knew each comma, each scratch. "My dearest Ellie, it's all mud and noise here. I haven't slept in days. The men talk about home like it's a distant dream, something that maybe never existed at all. But I think of you, and that keeps me alive. I dream of a little house after the war. Nothing big, just ours. With too many flowers in the garden and a dog named Winston, because I love Churchill, and I think the dog will too. Wait for me, Ellie. Please wait for me. And I waited. God, I waited. Until a different letter arrived. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, written through pain or fear. Ellie, if anything happens to me, don't wait forever. You deserve more life than this war can give. Forgive me. I cried until the candle beside me melted into nothing. And when darkness filled the room, I realized it wasn't just the absence of light. It was a warning. Winter came with fury. Frost clung to the windows like icy fingers. The wind howled through the cracks of the house, carrying the scent of snow and distant death. One cold morning, before dawn, a knock dragged me from sleep. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy, formal. I knew. Before opening the door, I knew. An American officer stood there, uniform immaculate, worn medals catching the gray light. He held his cap to his chest, and his eyes. His eyes carried the sorrow of a man who delivered heartbreak for a living. He didn't need to speak. "Miss Eleanor," he said, voice steady but soft. "I regret to inform you." I didn't hear the rest. Everything became white noise, missing in action, not dead, not alive, missing. A word that wasn't an answer, wasn't peace, just emptiness. He handed me a small yellowed envelope. This was his last letter, he murmured. It was found among his belongings. My hands shook so violently I could barely open it. The paper smelled faintly of smoke and blood. My Ellie, if this letter has reached you, it means I failed in my promise, but not in my love. The night before we left, I was injured. Not badly, or at least that's what they told me. But something inside me changed. Pain, dizzy spells. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to be left behind. I didn't want you to remember me as weak. If I don't return, promise me this. Live. Smile. Love again. Don't let this war take more from you than it already has. Your Winter, Daniel. I whispered those words over and over, like a prayer unraveling into madness. Your Winter. Your Winter. As if the season itself had stolen him from me. As if the cold had swallowed everything he was. Time passed. Years slid by like pages in a book I wasn't ready to finish. I married, not for love, not that kind of love, but for survival, for the quiet desperation of not being alone in a world that had hollowed me out. Thomas was a good man, gentle, patient. He never asked about Daniel. Never demanded I love him with the same fire I'd once felt for a soldier who disappeared into the fog of war. He simply accepted me. We had children. We built a life full of the small joys Daniel once dreamed of. A little house with a garden, a dog. I named him Winston, and Thomas never asked why. Sunday afternoons with tea and biscuits. A simple life, a safe life. But a small part of me, hidden, quiet, never stopped hearing the distant echo of boots in the mud. Thump, thump, thump. Thomas died one silent autumn, at 78. He fell asleep reading the newspaper and simply didn't wake. A gentle death. A fair death. For a gentle, fair man. Months later, I decided to clean out the attic. Dusty boxes, yellowed photo albums, old clothes that smelled of mothballs and forgotten stories. At the bottom of a cardboard box, wrapped in a faded scarf, I found Thomas's journal. Pages filled with ordinary thoughts, simple memories, shopping lists, notes about the weather. Nothing unusual. Until, tucked inside the back cover, taped with yellowed edges, I found a newspaper clipping. My hands trembled. The headline made my heart stop. American soldier found alive in 1945, recovering in the U.S. Below it, a grainy, blurred photograph, but unmistakable. Daniel Carter. Older, thinner. Face marked with visible and invisible scars. Eyes empty. Eyes of a man who had seen things no one should ever see. But alive. Alive. The article said he survived the attack. That French fishermen had rescued him weeks later. That he spent months, years in military hospitals, suffering from severe trauma and near total memory loss. He remembered nothing. Not who he was. Not where he came from. Not who he loved. The clipping was dated 1946, long before I married. Thomas knew. He knew all those years, and never told me. I sat on the cold attic floor, journal in one hand, clipping in the other, and cried like the 19-year-old girl I once was, the girl who believed in promises, in eternal love, in happy endings. Daniel lived, survived, but never came back, never wrote, never looked for me. Or maybe he simply didn't remember who Ellie was. Some loves don't end with death. Some end with silence. And some, like ours, remain frozen in time, suspended between what was and what could have been. Daniel promised he'd be back before winter ended. And perhaps, in a way, he kept that promise. Because inside me, in that dark corner where we store the things we cannot let go, winter never ended. Never ended. And it never will.